There is a spice sitting in your kitchen right now that has been studied in over 1,500 published clinical trials. It is the second most traded spice on the planet, right after salt. You have probably used it today. And almost nobody is connecting it to one of the most powerful fat-burning mechanisms your body has, especially after 50. I'm not talking about turmeric. I'm not talking about cinnamon. I'm not talking about ginger. I'm talking about black pepper. Now, before you click away, I know what you're thinking. Black pepper? That's it? Stick with me, because what I'm about to show you has nothing to do with black pepper as a seasoning. It has everything to do with a specific compound inside it called piperine, and what piperine does inside your fat cells, particularly the dangerous fat that builds up around your organs after 50, is genuinely one of the most fascinating things I have come across in decades of research. Here's what we are going to cover in the next 12 minutes. I am going to show you exactly why belly fat after 50 is a completely different biological problem than the belly fat you had at 35. I am going to explain the 3 specific mechanisms through which piperine targets that fat, and one of them has to do with a type of tissue inside your body that most people have never heard of. And I am going to give you a precise, practical protocol, including the one mistake that makes black pepper completely useless as a metabolic tool, and that almost everyone is making right now. By the end of this video, you will never look at that little shaker on your kitchen table the same way again. So let's start with what most people believe about belly fat after 50. The story goes like this. You get older, your metabolism slows down, you lose muscle mass, your hormones shift, and the fat just shows up, around the midsection, around the hips. And most doctors will tell you, that is just aging. Eat a little less, move a little more, and accept that your body is different now. I have heard that exact conversation described to me by thousands of patients over 30 years. And I have to be honest with you, that advice is utterly inadequate. Not because it is entirely wrong. Yes, metabolism does shift after 50, but because it completely misses what is actually happening biologically. And when you miss the mechanism, you miss the solution. Here's what the conventional model gets wrong. It treats all belly fat as the same thing. It is not. There are 2 completely different types of fat in your abdominal region. The first is subcutaneous fat. That is the soft fat you can pinch right under your skin. Annoying, yes, but metabolically, it is relatively quiet. The second type is visceral fat. That is the fat that sits deep inside your abdominal cavity, packed around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. And visceral fat is not passive storage. It is not just sitting there waiting to be burned. Visceral fat is a metabolically active tissue. It behaves almost like an organ. It secretes inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines, compounds like TNF-alpha and interleukin-6 that circulate through your bloodstream and create a state of chronic low-grade inflammation throughout your entire body. Now, what does that mean in practical terms? It means visceral fat is not just a cosmetic issue. It is directly linked to insulin resistance, to cardiovascular risk, to cognitive decline, and to the kind of fatigue that makes you feel 10 years older than you are. A meta-analysis published in the International Journal of Obesity, looking at over 28,000 adults across multiple age groups, found that visceral fat accumulation accelerates significantly after 50, independent of total caloric intake. Independent, meaning you can be eating the same amount you always ate and still accumulate more visceral fat. Because the problem is not just calories. The problem is 2 specific mechanisms that begin to fail after 50. The first is thermogenesis, your body's ability to generate heat and burn energy through a specialized tissue called brown adipose tissue. After 50, that system becomes progressively less active. I am going to go deep on this in the next section because this is where piperine becomes extraordinary. The second is peripheral insulin sensitivity. After 50, your muscle cells and fat cells become less responsive to insulin signals. Glucose stays elevated longer. Fat storage pathways stay activated longer. And the visceral region, for reasons that are still being studied, is disproportionately affected. So when someone tells you to just eat less and move more, they are giving you a general answer to a very specific biological problem. That is like telling someone with a broken thermostat to just wear a sweater. It addresses the symptom. It does not touch the mechanism. And the mechanism, that is exactly what piperine addresses, directly, at the cellular level. And to understand how it does that, you need to understand 3 things that are happening inside your body right now. So now let's talk about what piperine actually does, inside your cells, at the biological level. Because this is where it gets fascinating. Piperine is the active alkaloid compound in black pepper, Piper nigrum. It is what gives black pepper its characteristic sharpness. But calling it a flavoring compound is like calling a scalpel a kitchen tool. Technically accurate, completely misses the point. Piperine is a biochemical modulator. Think of it as a master key. It does not just open one door in your metabolism, it opens several at once. And 3 of those doors are directly relevant to visceral fat, especially the visceral fat that accumulates after 50. Let me take you through each one. The first mechanism, brown fat activation. Now, most people know about fat as one thing, white adipose tissue, the stuff you can see, the stuff you can pinch. But your body actually has a second type of fat. It is called brown adipose tissue, brown fat. And it does something completely different from white fat. White fat stores energy. Brown fat burns energy to produce heat. Think of brown fat as a furnace built into your body. It does not hold fuel. It consumes it. And it does this through a specialized protein called UCP1, uncoupling protein 1. What UCP1 does is essentially short-circuit the normal energy production process inside your mitochondria, those little energy factories inside your cells, and redirect that energy as heat instead of storing it. Now here's the problem. After 50, brown fat activity declines significantly. The furnace does not disappear. It just gets harder and harder to ignite. Piperine reignites it. It does this by activating a receptor called TRPV1, transient receptor potential vanilloid 1. Now, what is TRPV1? It is a receptor on your cell surface that responds to heat signals and certain chemical compounds. Capsaicin, the active compound in chili peppers, activates it. That burning sensation you get from hot food, that is TRPV1 firing. Piperine activates the exact same receptor with virtually no burning sensation. And when TRPV1 activates, it triggers upregulation of UCP1 in brown adipose tissue. The furnace turns on. Your body starts generating heat by burning fat as fuel. That is thermogenesis. And that is mechanism number 1. The second mechanism, stopping new fat cells before they form. This one I find particularly remarkable because most fat loss strategies focus on burning existing fat. Piperine does something different. It interferes with the process of creating new fat cells in the first place. Inside your body, there is a protein called PPARG, peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma. Here's what it actually does. PPARG is essentially the master switch for fat cell formation. When PPARG activates, it triggers immature cells that have not yet committed to becoming fat cells to fully differentiate into mature fat-storing adipocytes. Piperine suppresses PPARG activity. It tells the switch, stay off, stop making new fat cells, particularly in the visceral region, where PPARG expression is disproportionately high after 50. Think about what that means. You are not just burning existing fat. You are interrupting the biological program that keeps adding to it. That is a completely different level of intervention. The third mechanism. And this one affects everything else you eat and every supplement you take. Piperine is one of the most potent natural bioavailability enhancers ever studied. Here's what that means. When you swallow any nutrient, any anti-inflammatory compound, any fat-soluble vitamin, any supplement, your body has a built-in system for breaking it down before it can be fully absorbed. 2 key players in that system are enzymes that live in your liver and your intestinal wall. Their job is essentially to act as bouncers, screening compounds and metabolizing a significant portion of them before they ever reach your bloodstream. Piperine inhibits both of them. When those enzymes are inhibited, dramatically more of every compound you consume gets through, into your blood, into your tissues, into your cells where it can actually do something. I will show you the exact numbers behind this in the next section. And the number is so large that I want you to see the study before I say it out loud. Because if I just say it now, you will think I am exaggerating. But understand the broader implication already. This is not just a fat burner. It is a force multiplier for everything else you are doing. Now, there is a 4th layer to this. And it is specific to what happens after 50. After 50, a hormone called leptin begins to lose its effectiveness. Leptin is your body's satiety signal, the hormone that tells your brain you have enough fat stored and you do not need to eat more or store more. Now, what is leptin resistance? Think of it like this. Your brain has a thermostat for body fat. Leptin is the signal that tells the thermostat the room is warm enough. Leptin resistance means the thermostat has gone deaf. Your brain stops hearing the signal. It thinks you are starving even when you have plenty of fat stored. So it keeps the fat storage pathways open. It keeps hunger elevated. It keeps your metabolic rate suppressed. Piperine has shown activity in modulating leptin receptor sensitivity in animal models. The human research is still developing in this specific area. I want to be straight with you about that. But the mechanistic pathway is consistent with everything else we see in the thermogenesis and fat cell data. 4 mechanisms, 1 compound, already on your kitchen table. Now let me show you the numbers. Now let's talk about the science. Because everything I just explained to you, the brown fat activation, the fat cell suppression, the leptin pathway, that is not theory. That is a research trail that goes back decades, and most of it has been sitting in published journals completely ignored by mainstream nutrition advice. Let me walk you through it. In 2012, a research team in South Korea published a study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. They took 2 groups of subjects in an obesity model and gave one group piperine supplementation for 8 weeks. No changes to diet, no changes to activity, just piperine. The group receiving piperine showed significant reductions in body fat percentage and abdominal circumference. And here's what made this study particularly interesting. The researchers did not just measure fat loss. They measured the expression of genes involved in fat cell formation, PPARG activity. The master switch for fat cell creation that I mentioned earlier was measurably suppressed in the piperine group. That is not a dietary effect. That is a genetic signaling effect. Now, I want to go back even further. There is a study from 1998, published over 25 years ago, out of research institutions in India, looking at piperine and thermogenic response in human subjects. This study documented measurable increases in thermogenesis following piperine administration, increased heat production, increased metabolic rate. It has been sitting there ever since. And of course, nobody talks about it. But here is the study I find most extraordinary. And this one comes with a number that I still find remarkable every time I look at it. Same year, 1998. A team of researchers published a landmark paper in the journal Planta Medica. They were looking at curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, and they had a problem. Curcumin on its own has terrible bioavailability. When you swallow it, your digestive system breaks it down so rapidly that almost none of it reaches your bloodstream. The absorption rate of curcumin alone is approximately 1%. 1%. So they added piperine, 20 milligrams of piperine alongside a standard curcumin dose. And the bioavailability of curcumin increased by 2,000%. That is not a typo, 2,000% in human subjects, published in a peer-reviewed journal. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that piperine is not just a fat-burning compound in isolation. It is a bioavailability amplifier. It blocks the enzymes that your body normally uses to break down and eliminate compounds before they can be absorbed. When you block those enzymes, everything gets through, not just curcumin. Virtually every fat-soluble nutrient and anti-inflammatory compound you consume becomes dramatically more effective in the presence of piperine. Think about what that means practically. Every anti-inflammatory food you eat, every supplement you take, every nutrient in that meal, piperine makes them work better. It is like upgrading the absorption system of your entire digestive tract. Now let me give you a direct comparison that puts this in perspective. If you compare piperine to capsaicin, the active compound in hot peppers, the thing that makes chili peppers burn, both compounds activate the same receptor, TRPV1, the same thermogenic pathway, the same fat-burning mechanism. But capsaicin creates intense burning sensation in your mouth, your throat, your stomach. A lot of people cannot tolerate it. A lot of people over 50 with any digestive sensitivity simply cannot use it at therapeutic doses. Piperine activates the exact same receptor, with virtually zero gastrointestinal irritation at functional doses. Same mechanism, same thermogenic activation, none of the discomfort, not even close. And then there is the dose question, because this is where the research gets very specific, and where most people are making a critical error right now. Studies showing meaningful metabolic effects from piperine consistently use doses between 5 and 20 milligrams of active piperine per administration. Below 5 milligrams, the thermogenic and adipogenic effects drop off significantly. The effect is dose dependent. It requires a threshold. Now here's the problem. Most commercial black pepper, pre-ground, sitting in a jar on a store shelf, has been exposed to oxygen for weeks or months. Piperine degrades with oxidation. The concentration of active piperine in pre-ground pepper can drop by 30 to 50% within weeks of grinding. So people sprinkle a little pre-ground pepper on their eggs and wonder why nothing is happening. That is exactly the mistake I am going to fix for you right now. All right, let's get practical, because this is the part that actually matters. Everything I have explained to you, the brown fat activation, the fat cell suppression, the bioavailability amplification, none of it does anything for you unless you apply it correctly. And applying it correctly means understanding a few very specific details that most people get completely wrong. So let me give you the protocol, step by step, no ambiguity. Step 1, dose. The functional threshold for piperine, the minimum amount that research consistently shows produces measurable metabolic effects, is 5 milligrams of active piperine per serving. In practical terms, that translates to approximately a quarter teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper per meal. Not a pinch, not a dusting, a quarter teaspoon. That is your floor. If you want to work toward the higher end of the studied range, around 20 milligrams, you are looking at closer to a full teaspoon spread across your meals throughout the day. Start at the lower dose and work up. Your digestive system will tell you what it tolerates. Step 2, form. And this one is critical. You need freshly ground black pepper, not pre-ground, not the powder that has been sitting in a jar on your shelf for 3 months. Here is why. Piperine is sensitive to oxidation. The moment a peppercorn is cracked open and exposed to air, the active piperine compound begins to degrade. Research on volatile compound retention in ground spices shows that piperine concentration can drop by 30 to 50% within weeks of grinding. That little pre-filled pepper shaker at your kitchen table, if it has been open for more than a month, you are getting a fraction of the active compound you think you are getting. Buy whole peppercorns. Grind them fresh. Every single time. A basic pepper mill costs almost nothing, and it changes everything. Step 3, timing and pairing. Piperine is fat soluble. That means it is absorbed significantly better in the presence of dietary fat. Take it with your largest meal of the day. Ideally a meal that contains a quality fat source. Olive oil, butter, eggs, fatty fish, avocado. Any of those work. The fat acts as a carrier that pulls the piperine through your intestinal wall and into circulation far more efficiently. Do not take it on an empty stomach with just water and hope for the best. It will not absorb the way it needs to. Step 4, the stack. If you want to maximize the visceral fat effect. And this is the combination that the research supports most strongly. Pair your black pepper with turmeric. Specifically, about half a teaspoon of turmeric alongside your quarter teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper consumed with a fat-containing meal. Remember that 2,000% bioavailability increase I showed you? That is the piperine and curcumin combination working together. The piperine handles the fat burning and the absorption. The curcumin adds a powerful anti-inflammatory layer that directly targets the inflammatory cytokines being secreted by visceral fat tissue. They work synergistically in a way that neither one does as effectively alone. That combination, black pepper, turmeric, dietary fat, is the most studied natural anti-inflammatory and metabolic stack on the planet, and it costs almost nothing. Step 5, what to avoid. First, avoid white pepper. I hear this one a lot. People assume white pepper and black pepper are interchangeable. They are not. White pepper comes from the same plant, but the outer layer of the berry, which is where the majority of the piperine is concentrated, is removed during processing. White pepper contains roughly 1% piperine. Black pepper contains between 5 and 9%. You would need to use 5 to 9 times as much white pepper to approach the same active dose. Just use black pepper. Second, avoid proprietary blends and pre-mixed seasoning products that list black pepper as an ingredient. The concentration of active piperine in those products is almost never disclosed, almost never standardized, and almost never functional. If you cannot verify the piperine content, you cannot hit your dose. One important note. If you are on any long-term prescription medication, have a conversation with your doctor before significantly increasing your piperine intake. Remember what I said about the enzymes piperine inhibits. That same mechanism that improves nutrient absorption can also affect how your body processes certain drugs. This is not a reason to avoid piperine. It is just a reason to have that conversation first. Now, the timeline. Do not expect to feel something dramatic in the first week. That is not how this works. The thermogenic effect of piperine is real, but it is not a stimulant. You are not going to feel a buzz or a sudden heat wave. What you are doing is shifting the underlying biology, gradually reactivating brown fat tissue, gradually suppressing new fat cell formation, gradually improving the absorption of every anti-inflammatory compound you consume. The studies showing meaningful reductions in abdominal circumference and visceral fat markers were conducted over 6 to 12 weeks. That is your realistic window. Try this for 30 days. Do not change anything else about how you eat. Just add freshly ground black pepper, a quarter teaspoon, to your main meal every single day, paired with turmeric if you have it, with a fat source. Consistently. 30 days. Prove it to yourself. So let's bring this all together. Black pepper, the most overlooked metabolic tool in your kitchen. Not because the science is not there. It absolutely is. But because nobody profits from telling you to grind fresh pepper on your food. There is no patent on a peppercorn. There is no billion-dollar industry built around it. So the information just sits there, in published journals, waiting for someone to connect the dots. And now you have those dots. Here's what piperine actually does inside your body. 1. It activates brown adipose tissue, your body's internal furnace, through the TRPV1 receptor pathway. The same mechanism that makes hot peppers thermogenic without any of the discomfort. 2. It suppresses PPARG, the master genetic switch for new fat cell formation, which means your body is getting a direct signal to stop building new visceral fat storage. 3. It inhibits the digestive enzymes that break down nutrients before absorption, making every anti-inflammatory food and supplement you consume dramatically more effective. Up to 2,000% more effective in the case of curcumin. 3 mechanisms. 1 spice. That has been on your kitchen table this entire time. And the protocol is simple. Freshly ground black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon minimum, with your main meal, with a fat source. Paired with turmeric if you want the full synergistic effect, every day for 30 days. That is it. Now, if this video was useful to you, if it changed the way you think about something as simple as what is sitting on your kitchen table, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. It takes 1 second, and it helps this information reach more people who genuinely need it. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time. I put out new content every week. Practical, science-backed information with no fluff and no agenda. Just the stuff that actually works. Try the protocol. Come back in 30 days. Drop a comment and tell me what you noticed. I read every single one. Your experience is valuable, not just to me, but to everyone else in this community who is on the same journey. I am Andrew Collins. I will see you in the next video.